In the dead of winter, 1944, a lone Japanese naval officer stared out from a rattling train window into an endless sea of snow, his breath fogging the glass like a veil between worlds. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Tanaka had been raised on tales of unbreakable honor, where surrender was worse than death. Captured in the icy grip of the Aleutian Islands just months before, he braced for the horrors his superiors had promised: brutal interrogations, starvation, and a shameful end at the hands of barbaric Americans. But as the train screeched to a halt at Camp McCoy in Wisconsin, with temperatures plunging to -20°F, Tanaka whispered to his comrades a vow that would soon unravel everything he knew. "If they break us, we die as warriors." Little did he realize, the true shock awaited not in cruelty, but in an act of unexpected humanity that would force him to question the very foundations of his loyalty and the war itself. The 183 prisoners disembarked into the biting wind, their thin tropical uniforms no match for the Midwestern freeze. Many had never seen snow before, let alone felt its merciless sting. Their feet crunched over the frozen ground as American guards, bundled in heavy coats, guided them toward the camp gates. Tanaka scanned the scene: towering barbed wire fences, guard towers looming every 200 yards, and machine gun nests positioned for control. This was no illusion, it was a fortress. Yet, the guards' expressions held no malice, only a quiet efficiency, almost like shepherds herding a flock through a storm. "Move along, folks," one called through an interpreter, a Nisei soldier named Sergeant Kenji Yamamoto, whose Japanese roots made his role all the more surreal. "We've got heat inside." Inside the wooden barracks, coal stoves roared with warmth, chasing away the numbness from their limbs. American soldiers distributed wool coats, sturdy boots, and thick socks, items that seemed too generous, too calculated. Tanaka's mind raced. In the Imperial Japanese Navy, prisoners were tools or vermin, not recipients of comfort. "This is a ploy," he murmured to Ensign Akira Suzuki, a young pilot shot down over Attu. "They soften us to extract secrets." Suzuki nodded, his eyes wide with suspicion. The men huddled together, whispering of Bushido, the warrior code that demanded death over dishonor. They had all heard the propaganda: Americans were demons, devoid of mercy, who would work captives to death or worse. As evening fell, an announcement echoed through the barracks: dinner in the mess hall. The prisoners formed lines, their steps hesitant, stomachs knotted with dread. The air inside the hall was thick with unfamiliar scents: steaming pots of vegetables, bread, and something achingly familiar: rice. But not the coarse, barley-mixed gruel they knew from rations back home. As Tanaka approached the serving line, a smiling American ladled a heaping portion onto his tray: pure white rice, fluffy and pristine, the kind reserved for emperors or high-ranking officers in Japan. For the enlisted men, many from humble farming families, this was a rarity, a symbol of prosperity they had seldom tasted. A chill ran through Tanaka that had nothing to do with the cold. In Japanese tradition, dating back to samurai times, condemned prisoners received a final meal of white rice, adzuki beans, and pickled fish, a dignified farewell before execution. It was a ritual of respect, but unmistakable in its finality. Suzuki, behind him, froze, his tray trembling. "Commander," he hissed, "this is it. Our last supper." The realization swept through the group like a silent wave. Men exchanged glances, some paling, others straightening their postures in stoic resolve. A few began to eat slowly, savoring what they believed were their final moments. Others pushed the trays away, preferring hunger to false hope. Tears welled in the eyes of the youngest, while veterans like Tanaka forced composure. "Eat," he commanded softly. "Show no weakness. We face this with dignity." The American staff watched in bewilderment as the hall fell into eerie quiet. Captain William Roberts, the camp's commanding officer, noticed the tension and pulled Sergeant Yamamoto aside. "What's wrong? They look like they've seen ghosts." Yamamoto spoke discreetly with a few prisoners, then returned, his face etched with surprise. "Sir, it's the rice. In their culture, white rice is given to those about to die. They think this means execution tonight." Roberts blinked, processing the cultural chasm. "Good Lord. We need to clear this up now," Within minutes, interpreters gathered the prisoners. Roberts stood firm, his voice steady through translation. "Gentlemen, this is a misunderstanding. You are not facing execution. The white rice is standard here, part of the rations we provide under the Geneva Convention. You'll get it every day, along with meat, vegetables and bread, just like our own troops." The Geneva Convention, he explained briefly, was an international agreement signed by nations, including Japan, to ensure humane treatment of prisoners, adequate food, shelter, medical care, and protection from harm. No torture, no forced confessions beyond name and rank. The U.S. adhered strictly, viewing it as a matter of honor and law. Skepticism hung heavy. Tanaka rose, his voice measured. "You claim this, but our training told us otherwise. Prisoners are stripped of humanity." Roberts nodded empathetically. "I can't change what you were taught, but actions will prove our words. You'll work fair hours, earn wages in camp scrip, receive mail through the Red Cross, and have access to education and recreation." Murmurs rippled through the men. For many, this clashed with the indoctrination of total war, where the enemy was portrayed as savage. Yet, as they returned to their barracks that night, bellies full for the first time in months, a seed of doubt took root. Over the next days, the reality of Camp McCoy began to unfold. The camp, sprawling across Wisconsin's rugged terrain, had been repurposed from a training ground to house over 2,700 Japanese POWs at its peak, the largest such facility in the continental U.S. Arrivals like Tanaka's group joined others captured from Pacific battles, including submariners and infantry. Daily routines followed Geneva rules meticulously. Reveille at dawn, meals 3 times a day with ethnic touches like soy sauce and pickled vegetables to ease homesickness. Medical checkups revealed and treated malnutrition from their prior ordeals, with dentists filling cavities and surgeons addressing wounds. Work assignments came soon, but unlike the grueling labor they feared, it was voluntary and compensated. Many Japanese initially refused, seeing it as betrayal, but some took on tasks like tending vegetable gardens or maintaining barracks, 8-hour shifts with breaks, earning 80 cents a day in scrip for the canteen. The canteen itself was a revelation, stocked with cigarettes, candy, writing paper, and even harmonicas. Tanaka, using his first earnings, bought a notebook to journal his thoughts, grappling with the paradox. "We eat better here than on our own ships," he wrote one night. "White rice daily, while our families ration scraps. Is this mercy or mockery?" Tensions simmered internally too. Navy officers like Tanaka outnumbered Army prisoners, leading to command disputes. Army men resented Navy failures in battles, refusing orders at times, but camp leaders mediated, fostering a fragile unity. Recreation offered escape. Prisoners organized baseball games, sometimes against guards who played fair and laughed off losses. Art supplies arrived for those with talent, and Suzuki began sketching the snowy landscapes, capturing the strange beauty of their captivity. As February thawed into March, personal stories emerged, humanizing the divide. Captain Roberts made rounds, learning names and sharing snippets of American life through interpreters. One evening, he sat with Tanaka, discussing families over coffee. "I have a wife and son in Iowa," Roberts shared. "Miss them every day." Tanaka opened up about his daughters in Tokyo, the ache of separation. For the first time, Tanaka saw the enemy as men with hearts, not monsters. This gradual shift, born from daily decencies, challenged the propaganda that had fueled the war. What began as a shocking arrival in the snow was evolving into a profound lesson in shared humanity, one that would reshape lives long after the conflict ended. As spring arrived in 1945, the snow finally melted, revealing rolling green hills and the first wildflowers pushing through Wisconsin soil. For the Japanese prisoners at Camp McCoy, the changing seasons brought more than warmer days. They marked the slow erosion of the walls they had built around their expectations. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Tanaka continued his daily journal entries, each one a quiet battle between duty and dawning realization. The white rice incident had been the first crack in the armor of propaganda, but now came a steady stream of experiences that widened it further. Work details expanded with the thaw. Prisoners were assigned to the camp's large agricultural program, planting rows of potatoes, carrots, beans, and corn across acres of fertile land. Unlike the back-breaking toil they had feared, the schedule was strict but humane. 8 hours under the sun, with water breaks, shaded rest periods, and lunches packed from the mess hall. American overseers worked alongside them, often sharing tools and jokes through interpreters. Tanaka found himself hoeing beside a young guard from Minnesota who spoke halting Japanese phrases learned from textbooks. "Good work," the soldier said one afternoon, wiping sweat from his brow. "You plant like farmer." Tanaka managed a small smile, the first genuine one he could remember in years. He had once viewed such casual interaction as impossible. The camp store, or canteen, became a place of quiet wonder. With their earned scrip, prisoners bought small luxuries: bars of chocolate that melted on the tongue like memories of home, packets of cigarettes, even seeds to grow tiny vegetable patches near the barracks. Some men purchased harmonicas and flutes, and soon soft melodies drifted through the evenings, traditional Japanese tunes mixed with American folk songs taught by curious guards. Ensign Akira Suzuki discovered a talent for drawing and was given charcoal and paper. His sketches began as stark portraits of barbed wire against gray skies, but gradually softened to include laughing faces, baseball games, and the gentle curve of the Wisconsin River at dusk. One piece showed a guard handing a prisoner a cup of coffee, their hands almost touching across the divide. Education classes sprang up organically. Lieutenant Kenji Mori, a former university instructor captured on Saipan, organized lessons in English grammar, American history, and basic mathematics. Attendance grew quickly. Men who had once memorized imperial rescripts now puzzled over irregular verbs and the Declaration of Independence. "Why do they teach us their ways?" one skeptical sergeant asked during a session. Mori answered thoughtfully, "Because knowledge is not betrayal. Understanding the enemy makes us stronger, even in defeat." Tanaka attended faithfully, not only to improve communication but to grapple with the ideas presented. He read aloud passages about liberty and justice, words that clashed violently with everything he had been taught about America's supposed barbarism. Medical care continued to astonish. When a prisoner developed severe pneumonia after a spring rain, he was rushed to the camp infirmary. American doctors administered penicillin, a drug many Japanese troops had never encountered, and nursed him back to health with round-the-clock attention. Another man required dental work for an abscessed tooth. The camp dentist filled it without charge, explaining the procedure patiently through an interpreter. Tanaka himself visited the clinic for a lingering shoulder injury from his capture. The surgeon examined him carefully, prescribed rest and heat therapy, and followed up weekly. "We want you well," the doctor said simply. In the Imperial Navy, medical resources were scarce even for active personnel. Here, prisoners received priority equal to American servicemen. Recreation grew more elaborate. A baseball league formed, with teams named after Japanese islands and American states. Matches drew crowds of prisoners and guards alike. The Americans played hard but fairly, cheering good plays on both sides. One memorable game ended with a tie. Afterward, players from both teams shared cold lemonade and stories. Tanaka, who had never played before, tried his hand at batting and struck out spectacularly. The laughter that followed felt foreign yet freeing. No one mocked him, they simply clapped him on the back and offered tips for next time. Religious observance became another bridge. Several prisoners requested permission to build a small Shinto shrine. After careful review by camp authorities and consultation with higher command, approval came. Using scrap lumber and stones, they constructed a modest wooden structure adorned with paper streamers and a simple torii gate. On the dedication day, they performed a quiet ceremony, offering rice and sake purchased from the canteen. To everyone's surprise, Captain William Roberts and several officers attended, standing respectfully at a distance with caps removed. Afterward, Roberts approached Tanaka. "I respect your faith," he said. "This place is yours to use as long as you need it." Tanaka bowed deeply, words failing him. In Japan, such freedom under captivity would have been unthinkable. By midsummer, news from the Pacific reached the camp through carefully curated newspapers and radio broadcasts monitored by staff. Prisoners learned of island-hopping campaigns, massive naval battles, and the firebombing of Japanese cities. Each report brought a wave of conflicting emotions: pride in their nation's resistance, fear for loved ones, and growing awareness of the war's mounting toll. Tanaka's letters home, limited to brief messages routed through the Red Cross, became lifelines. He wrote the same simple words each time: I live. I am treated with fairness. Think of you always. Whether the letters arrived was uncertain, but the act of writing kept hope alive. Internal dynamics shifted too. Early rivalries between Navy and Army prisoners faded as shared experiences forged bonds. They elected Tanaka as their representative to camp leadership, a role he accepted with gravity. In meetings with Roberts, he advocated for small improvements: better drainage in the barracks during heavy rains, additional blankets for the elderly among them. Roberts listened and acted where possible, always explaining decisions transparently. We follow rules, he would say, but rules allow for decency. One humid July evening, Roberts invited Tanaka and a few others to an informal gathering outside the officers' quarters. They sat on benches under the stars, sharing iced tea and conversation. Through interpreters, stories flowed. Roberts spoke of his childhood on a dairy farm, the smell of fresh milk, the quiet pride of small-town life. Tanaka described cherry blossoms in Tokyo, his daughter's laughter, the rhythm of naval watches at sea. For the first time, Tanaka felt something akin to friendship across the divide. War makes enemies of men who might otherwise share a drink, Roberts said quietly. Tanaka nodded. And peace reveals what war hides. As August approached, the air grew thick with unspoken tension. Rumors circulated of a new and terrible weapon. When confirmation arrived on the 6th, the bombing of Hiroshima, the camp fell into stunned silence. Many had relatives in the city. 3 days later, Nagasaki followed. Grief swept through the barracks like a storm. Men sat in small groups, heads bowed, some weeping openly, others staring into the distance. Roberts met with Tanaka privately. I cannot imagine your pain, he said. We are doing everything to get word to families through the Red Cross. Whatever happens next, your treatment here remains unchanged. Then, on August 15th, the announcement came. Japan had surrendered. Emperor Hirohito's voice, broadcast through crackling speakers, confirmed the end. Reactions varied. Some prisoners stood rigid in shock, others collapsed in tears of relief or sorrow. Tanaka addressed his men that evening, voice steady despite the weight in his chest. Our country has suffered greatly. Many we love are gone. But we breathe still. We have witnessed something here that few could have imagined, mercy from those we called enemies. Perhaps in this defeat lies the seed of something better. We carry that forward. In the weeks that followed, Camp McCoy transformed. Barbed wire no longer symbolized captivity but transition. Restrictions eased, former prisoners walked freely within the grounds, shared meals with guards, planned their return. Tanaka continued writing, documenting every nuance of this strange, transformative time. The white rice that once signified death now represented life preserved, dignity upheld, and the slow, painful birth of understanding between former foes. What began in fear was ending in quiet gratitude, a testament to the power of humanity even amid the ruins of war. As autumn painted the Wisconsin landscape in fiery reds and golds, the former prisoners of Camp McCoy moved through their days with a strange new rhythm. The surrender had lifted the heaviest shadow, but it left behind a complex tangle of grief, relief, and uncertainty. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Tanaka walked the camp paths each morning, no longer under armed escort, simply a man reflecting on a world that had shifted beneath his feet. The barbed wire still stood, but its meaning had changed, from barrier to temporary boundary, soon to dissolve entirely. Daily life continued with remarkable continuity. Meals remained abundant, white rice served steaming alongside roast beef, fresh vegetables from the camp gardens, and even occasional desserts like apple pie that some prisoners had come to enjoy. The mess hall, once a place of dread, now buzzed with conversation. Men laughed over small mishaps, shared stories of home, and debated what awaited them upon repatriation. Tanaka often sat with Ensign Akira Suzuki, whose drawings had evolved into a full series documenting their time here. Scenes of baseball games under summer skies, quiet moments at the Shinto shrine, and the simple act of guards and prisoners sharing a cigarette after a long day's work. The agricultural program reached its peak harvest. Prisoners and American staff worked side by side to gather the bounty. Crates of tomatoes, sacks of potatoes, baskets of squash. Much of the produce went to supplement camp meals, but a portion was distributed to the men themselves. On crisp evenings, small groups gathered around improvised grills, cooking vegetables with soy sauce scavenged from the canteen. The aroma mingled with wood smoke and laughter, creating pockets of normalcy that felt almost dreamlike. Tanaka joined one such gathering, turning ears of corn over the flames. For a moment, the war felt distant, as if it belonged to another lifetime. Educational programs intensified in preparation for return. Lieutenant Kenji Mori expanded his classes to include practical topics, American business practices, basic English conversation for daily life, even rudimentary typing on borrowed machines. Many prisoners recognized that Japan's future would involve close interaction with the occupying forces. Learning the language and customs was no longer curiosity, it was survival. Tanaka practiced diligently, his accent softening with each session. He began reading American newspapers more closely, piecing together reports of the occupation, the rebuilding efforts, and the trials of wartime leaders back home. The information was filtered and incomplete, but it offered glimpses of a nation in ruins yet stubbornly resilient. Correspondence became more regular. The Red Cross system, though slow, delivered letters from Japan with increasing frequency. Tanaka received 3 precious messages from his wife over the autumn months. Her words were careful, censored, yet filled with love and quiet strength. The girls were healthy, the house damaged but standing, neighbors helping one another through shortages. One letter included a tiny pressed flower from their garden, a cherry blossom preserved from the previous spring. Tanaka carried it in his notebook like a talisman. In return, he wrote longer replies now, describing the camp not as a prison but as a place of unexpected lessons. He chose words that might pass the censors while conveying truth. The people here have shown me kindness I did not expect. It gives me hope for what comes next. Captain William Roberts continued his daily rounds, but the tone had shifted from official to personal. He organized small farewell gatherings for men scheduled for early repatriation. At one such event, he presented Tanaka with a simple gift, a pocket watch engraved with the camp's insignia and the date of Japan's surrender. "To mark a new beginning," Roberts said quietly. Tanaka accepted it with both hands, bowing deeply. "This will remind me," he replied, "that honor is not only in victory or death, but in how we treat one another when the fighting stops." By late October, preparations for large-scale repatriation accelerated. Medical examinations ensured fitness for travel. Personal belongings, accumulated scrips spent on souvenirs, drawings rolled into tubes, letters tied in bundles, were packed carefully. The camp orchestra, formed by musically inclined prisoners, gave a final performance under the assembly hall's bare bulbs. They played traditional pieces alongside American songs learned over the months. Guards and former captives sat together, some wiping eyes as the last notes faded. Tanaka's departure date arrived in early November. The train platform looked different now, no frost-covered windows, no biting wind promising hardship. Instead, pale sunlight filtered through bare branches. He stood with Suzuki, Mori, and others from his original group. Roberts approached, extending his hand. Tanaka took it without hesitation. "You led your men through something impossible," Roberts said. "You kept dignity when everything pushed against it." Tanaka met his gaze steadily. "And you showed us that our enemies could be men of conscience. That changes everything." The journey back began under a clear sky. The train rolled through the same vast landscapes they had first seen in terror, but now the snow was only beginning to dust the fields. Tanaka opened his notebook one last time on American soil. "I leave behind a place that taught me life is worth preserving," he wrote. "I return to a homeland that must rebuild from ashes. I carry no illusions about the difficulties ahead, but I also carry proof that understanding is possible even after hatred. That knowledge is heavier than any weapon." When the ship finally docked in Yokohama in mid-December, Tanaka stepped onto Japanese soil amid a crowd of returning soldiers and civilians. The city bore deep scars, rubble-strewn streets, skeletal buildings, the pervasive smell of charred wood. Yet people moved with purpose, clearing debris, sharing meager rations, rebuilding one brick at a time. He made his way to the modest house where his family waited. His wife opened the door, older and thinner but with the same steady eyes. His daughters, now taller, hesitated only a moment before running into his arms. Tears came freely then, for all they had lost and all they had found again. In the months and years that followed, Tanaka shared his experiences cautiously at first, then more openly. He spoke to community groups, to young people eager to understand the war's lessons. He emphasized the danger of blind obedience to propaganda, the courage required to question inherited beliefs, and the quiet power of treating others with basic decency. His diary, carefully preserved, was eventually published in Japan, becoming a quiet but influential voice in discussions of reconciliation and post-war identity. Ensign Suzuki's artwork gained recognition in exhibitions, his Camp McCoy series capturing the paradox of humane captivity. Lieutenant Mori returned to teaching, incorporating cross-cultural studies into his curriculum, helping a new generation navigate Japan's transformed place in the world. Camp McCoy itself transitioned back to a training facility, but a small museum later preserved its history. Among the exhibits stands a replica mess hall table set with trays of white rice. A plaque explains the incident that once convinced men they would die, only to teach them they would live and learn. Decades later, in 1985, several former prisoners, including an elderly Tanaka, returned to Wisconsin. They met aging guards, including a retired Captain Roberts. At a quiet ceremony, Tanaka spoke in careful but fluent English. "When we first saw that white rice," he said, "we believed it marked our end. Instead, it marked the beginning of understanding. We learned that enemies are only men, capable of cruelty or kindness. In choosing kindness, you gave us more than food, you gave us a future worth building." The story of those Japanese prisoners at Camp McCoy endures not because it was heroic in battle, but because it was human in the aftermath. It reminds us that even in the darkest chapters of history, small acts of decency can rewrite the script of enmity. A single meal, misunderstood and then explained, became the pivot point for transformation. And in that pivot lies a timeless truth. When we see the other as fully human, the possibility of peace is no longer impossible. And that concludes our story. If this account moved you, share in the comments which moment surprised you the most. Subscribe for more hidden chapters from World War II, and check the next video for another tale of courage and change. Until then, take care.